All right, guys. Saturday afternoon. So from the very, very large M to M, we're going to go to the very, very small. So we're going to talk about memory technology going to the next 5-10 years. So when I got the call, I was like, all right, you sure you want me to do this? So memory technology, as you guys know, it's a huge business, about $100 billion, and that doesn't count all the embedded memories. And Kilopass is clearly much, much smaller than Samsung, Hynix, and Micron. So not sure what I'm doing here. So I'll give you my perspective from a very, very tiny company. Before that, just in case you don't know Kilopass at all, since we're kind of small, the company was founded in 2001. I wasn't here at the time. We raised about $35 million in 4 rounds. The first product is a one-time programmable memory that you put inside a semiconductor because you want to either keep security IDs or you want to keep some manufacturing data, most likely trimming or defects or something. Or you want to put some software on chips, so smart Bluetooth or some of the IoT devices would use OTP for software. We have about 70 patents in that area, and we are productizing our next memory product. We have about 30 patents. We're going to grow some more. Small company, but we have pretty strong sales and a pretty strong cash position. So next I'm going to go from a tiny little Kilopass to where it all got started, and pardon me to be a little bit dramatic. So this is a chart that Ray Kurzweil, the president of MIT, plotted with help from several people, one of which is Carl Sagan, the astronomer. So if you look at the planet Earth, or even beyond that, and say, okay, well, so the time to the next generation, the time between generation, how long did it take, and how long ago did it happen? So the leftmost and the top left corner basically was Big Bang. That's the beginning of the universe. Happened a long time ago, and it did take a long time for us to get the first innovation where the universe started. And the last one, there are actually 2 dots there, to the right of 1e plus 2, that means 100 years. So it took 50 years for the semiconductor, it was 50 years ago that semiconductor technology got started. So the genetic engineering, the 2 of them happened about 50 years ago. And it took about 50 years for that technology to come to our world, from the time when people said, okay, it's going to happen, semiconductor or electronics. Okay. So the last 2 big innovations took about 50 years. So when Lee says, well, can you talk about memory technology in the next 5 years? If you look at the scale, it doesn't seem like it's a large enough scale. It's kind of very, very short. You can't seem to do much within 5 years, is what this slide basically says. Even if Kilopass were really smart, we just can't do anything in less than 50 years, because that's what the plot said. It's going to get faster, but it takes time. So the one thing I learned from this is that when we think about roadmap and technology, we really ought to think about in log scale. What 10x can we bring, and can we do it in less than 10 years? So if you think about that, and you say, okay, well, what does IoT mean? So I think, in my opinion, this is what Kilopass is working on. IoT represents the very, very last stage of information age that's brought to us by semiconductor. Because it happened about 50 years ago when semiconductor all happened and became real. So we are working on memory for the IoT, the era of IoT, and you'll see it today. What is it that we're working on? But we're really not thinking about that as our roadmap. It's just another step in our product line. Okay, so So the last line is sort of me begging for a speaking job, next year at Casper, because next year if you invite me, I'll come back to say, well, our roadmap really is bionic semiconductors, because the next thing after collecting all this information, this massively parallel, everyone getting data so we can be smarter, that's going to come to an end. And the next one after that is going to be bionic semiconductor. And we're beginning to work on that. And that's really what people call the roadmap on a log-to-log scale. Sounds crazy, I know, but if you don't work on bionic semiconductor, and we really just work on M2M, the unfortunate thing is that 30 years later, when machines are becoming very smart, and we are not bionic, we're all going to be lying in a crypt, and letting our machines do the joy for us, just like today when we play video games. The video games, M2M world is going to be so much more fulfilling and satisfying because you can fly, you can do everything perfectly, and you can play basketball games perfectly. That it's not worth getting up in the morning. Okay, so we like to think differently. We like to think that with bionic, with help, when the little booth outside that says Alzheimer's Association, well, that's not going to exist anymore. Okay, because semiconductor is going to come in and hopefully help make that go away, so we don't have to lie in the crypt. Okay, so next year we'll talk about that. This year, it's going to be about memory. Okay, all right. So since semiconductor is about 50 years in length, I'm going to take you back to a very fun year in my career, and most of you know this guy, so I will quote him. So the perspective in semiconductor, 1995 was a fun year. It was a very pivotal year in my career. I was younger, obviously, 20 years younger, actually. It's amazing. So this guy, his name is M.K. Tsai. I think is he still the chairman of MediaTek? I think, right? He is, right? Okay. So he said, at the time we bought this counter machine from this crazy guy, George Indico. Maybe some of you guys know him. It cost $2 million just to do layout. It's a layout editor. Okay, it's a kind of a dumb version of today's Cadence tool. Okay, cost $2 million for that. And they were doing a digital watch. And M.K. Tsai was actually designing gated, clock gating logic so that you can save a little power in the battery. And he would do the layout and go to the furnace and bake his wafer and cut it up and see if it works. Okay, that's all done by one guy. He's the chairman now. It's amazing. Okay, so that's 1995, and it's only 20 years ago. Okay, so in the last 20 years, as I was, I was a middle-aged guy, now I'm an old man, looking at a semiconductor and watching it advance, this is where it is today. Not everything, I don't work in an equipment company, and I don't work at Facebook. So from an IP company perspective, okay, basically right in the middle of the semiconductor ecosystem, there's an interesting thing that's going on here, which is the semiconductor industry at one point was very disaggregated. Everyone is very specialized. So equipment company, process, device, foundation IP, and then one kind of star IP or valuable IP, or whatever you want to call it, that includes ARM, obviously. And then chip companies build their VLSI architecture and algorithms on top of that. Today, the battlefront, the most heated battle is actually at that line. That's where you decide whether you're going to add value, take risk, or you're going to play it safe. It's an amazing, I live in a tiny little world, so pardon me for being overly dramatic. That's where I live, and it's a phenomenally fascinating world. Okay, starting from the left, the foundries are responsible for the foundation IPs. So they build memory, they build transistors, they build IOs. In some areas, they build a memory bit cell, and they provide the fuse. For them, the goals of everything below the red line is about cost, risk, and how quickly can I build something. Okay? But you know, it's not it's not a big stretch to say the Asians do this very, very well. Samsung, Hynix, SMIC, TSMC, UMC, a huge part of our manufacturing, who are very good at cost, risk, and ramp up, are all in Asia. And they're responsible for everything below the red line. Everything above the red line, well, it's kind of a wild, wild west. Everyone wants to differentiate because they're all tiny little guys, and if we don't differentiate, we don't survive. So what do? We build memory compilers, and we build some high-speed I/Os, and we have one-time programmable memory, which KillPass built. And what we have right now is this tug of war between the ones who have to differentiate and the ones who spend so many billions of dollars to build the fab. They have to reduce the cost, the risk, and the ramp up of the new wafers. And it's here that you can see that the memory compiler companies, they think of themselves as a screwdriver company. You know, they come in with the tools in their belt, and they say, where do you want me to screw this bolt? I'll put it all together. That's my value added. I don't do anything other than providing the compiler. The bit cell that determines the power, area, performance, that's done by the fab. But I can't live on that, so I have to differentiate. So they're pushing down, okay? On the other side of it, you know, you have the foundries providing the fuse. They say, no, well, hold on, wait a minute. Everyone is getting bigger and bigger fuse and more memory on the die that have to stay here. So I have to push up to provide that technology for my customers. Because if I don't, the risk of the ramp up is too high. So the tug of war really is, how much differentiation can the ones above the line provide? And if the adoption is too large, the ones below feels there's too much risk. They say, hey, you know what, I have to do it. And the tug of war is a fascinating tug of war. And the second thing is the cost of the value. If the cost of providing one of these differentiated value IP is too high, the company doesn't exist, it doesn't survive. Okay? So the question of this tug of war, usually in the, what's his name? Adam Smith, okay, the founding father of capitalism, says, you should let the market play it out. So usually, this tug of war between differentiator and the cost leader usually comes out okay. And that's why we all still have semiconductor industry, and we're all still adding value to our society. But the question is there a potential innovation that's masked by the fear of risk? So think about that. Is this something below the red line that is supposed to be getting better, but it's not getting better? Because the foundries are afraid that if they try and they don't succeed, the entire fab will sit idle. So the fear of risk and the drive for innovation right now are in this battle. And I don't want to say, good and evil or something. It's a battle every day for everybody. And I will start with one of the memories that's in the ultimate battle here. So if you look at DRAM, okay, the DRAM is 30 years old. It's a 30-year-old device. And so if you look at the roadmap for DRAM, NAND flash, and CPU and logic, they're kind of going parallel for most of the decade. And then about 2010, 2011, they start to clearly separate from each other, whereby this year, they're about 1.5 generations behind. So I think TSMC is now talking about 10 nanometer ramping up faster than they had planned because it's going well. The yield is going well and the customer demand is high. But if you look at the DRAMs, it's stuck. It's at 20 nanometer. And it's likely that it's going to be at 20 for a while. So the DRAM and the rest of the memory and logic transistors are actually separating pretty quickly. And if you want to know why, you look at the graph, the cross-section of the die. I promise you this is the only technical slide in the whole presentation. The rest is just garbage. Okay. If you look at this cross-section, and you see this long, long, tall stick right there, that's where the capacitor is. Okay. Capacitor today is about 100 times as tall as the transistor is wide. So if you're a tiny little human being, like your mom shrunk you, okay, into a tiny little thing, and you're walking in the forest of DRAM, it looks like downtown Manhattan. There are 8 billion skyscrapers, all 100-story tall, and you're walking through them, and they're just, wiggling because there are 8 billion of them. Okay. This die is 50 millimeters square in area. It has 8 billion of these skyscrapers. It also means that it doesn't matter if the transistor shrinks. That tall skyscraper is not going to shrink. And this is the biggest problem for DRAM. The notion that we're going to have a capacitor holding the zeros and ones and have a transistor underneath to decide whether to use it or not is 30 years old. It needs to be changed. But it's not being changed because 9% of Samsung Electronics revenue come from DRAM. 45% of its profit come from DRAM. So if you want to buy a Galaxy phone, you should go say thank you to the DRAM guys because they're subsidizing the Galaxy phone. And they can't screw it up. And they're really afraid of changing that structure because if they change it and it somehow doesn't work, guess what? The fab doesn't produce chips. Okay, and I'll just go back to this slide. This slide happens not just in foundries at TSMC, UMC, Global Foundry or something. It actually happens in DRAM fab as well. The need for differentiation is balanced by the fear of risk. And this, in plain sight, is the thing. All right. So if you want to talk about DRAM's got problem, it's got the next problem, which is the economics. Okay? On the left is a projection by Goldman Sachs, not by me, and so, Goldman Sachs should be pretty reputable, but who knows, okay? So it says that, the smartphone volume will peak. Okay, right now it's about 1.2 billion smartphones sold per year. So if he says it's going to peak, well, what's going to replace the demand for DRAM? Well, it happened to be what Steve was talking about earlier. It's the cloud that gathers all these massively parallel machines that are feeding you these data that you have to sort out. So the data, the servers and the graphics, the clouds are going to take up a bigger and bigger percentage of the DRAM consumption. And servers need performance. And if you look at on the right, as DRAM gets bigger, the amount of refresh that these capacitor needs gets bigger and bigger. The amount of time they take gets longer and longer. When DRAM is in refresh, it's useless. The servers cannot get to them. Okay, so now refresh becomes the next big issue. So if you can solve the capacitor construction issue, the next problem is that the DRAM you built isn't very good. It's great for a smartphone. It's horrible for servers. So, what does the next DRAM look like? Well, it cannot use a capacitor. It cannot use a refresh. This whole notion of let it go down, and it'll refresh it. It just doesn't work, it's garbage, okay? And this third thing is, DRAM has always been built for room temperature. It has a 37 degree human body to absorb any heat. Okay, it's in our pocket, it's in where we are, and we rarely like hot weather. So smartphone DRAMs are really at 37 degrees, okay? Or less. Well, if you're gonna be in server, 85 degrees C, that's what the weather look like inside the data center. And if you want to grow the next DRAM or build the next DRAM, that DRAM better like 85 degrees C weather or higher. Obviously, it has to catch up on scaling. It has to scale to 7 nanometer, and at the end, it has to cost less. So that's what the next DRAM looks like. Definitely doable. We're very excited that we have a solution for that. But that's what it looks like. It's kind of mildly interesting, but you know, that's what it looks like. So I'm going to go from DRAM now to SRAM. So a big part of SRAM is actually not very interesting, you know, because Intel, TSMC, Samsung, they're amazingly good at building SRAM. So the 1 to 10, 1 to let's say 7 nanosecond, 1 megabit to about less than half a gigabit area. The system on chip SRAM, there's no problem. Okay, beautiful. Okay. And then on the right-hand side, you have DRAMs and high bandwidth memories and memory cubes. That part of it also, the industry has it. It doesn't have a DRAM to put it in, but the architecture looks good. There's no problem with that. It's in between that there's all kinds of problems. Right? So the common notion is that SoC SRAM is about 50% of the area, 80% of the power. I don't know if I believe that, but let's leave with that. Nobody really wants to fix it. But the reality is that the middle part of it is where the new solution is needed. To scale our device to 100 gigabit Ethernet, to scale to 4K videos, to scale to everything bigger and better for us human beings, we need new memory in that area. There's one company, I think, left, IBM, Global Foundries, that builds embedded DRAM. But if you can see on that scale, it addresses a very tiny part of that scale. So it's got a limitation, and it's got a very limited availability. All right. Sorry, I lied. There's another slide here. It's technical. So on the left is an Intel processor. Okay. You'll notice that Intel processor is divided into two dies. On the right is the CPU die that we know as Haswell or whatever the next thing is behind them. Well, on the left, you can see that there's an eDRAM device, and it's because processors needs memory. And this, in the cloud center, is more important than ever. Right. So Intel is unique in that it's got a very good memory fab in there. So what if you are a fabless company like Cavium or, I don't know, Qualcomm, and you want to build a server, and you're stuck with foundry-provided SRAM, 8 megabytes or 16 megabytes, well, good luck. Your CPU, maybe from ARM, has to run 5 times as fast as Intel, just to be in the same performance. This benchmark is from Red Hat. This says that for a lot of the big data applications, the performance of the server depends on how much memory you have in your L4 cache. And if your L4 cache is 16 megabytes, well, your end result is about 20 to 40% relative to the Intel processor at the same clock speed. So given this, you better be 5 times as fast. So if Intel is at 2.5 gigahertz, you have to be 12.5 gigahertz to be the same. Otherwise, the CPU just waits. So for the SRAM, on the cloud side of it, on the big side of it, you have to get very, very large. Not the SRAM that people are talking about. That's sort of kindergarten SRAM. okay? Because for the next big cloud data, you need a lot more SRAM than that, okay? It has to have very low standby power at 100 degrees C, because it turns out on the big data side of it, everything wears out and the temperature is truly very hot. And it has to have both low latency and high bandwidth. And Steve earlier on talked about the fact that machines cannot wait. So it has to be low latency as well. On the device side of it, it's low standby at 50 degrees C, just in case you're in the Middle East and it's really warm there. And it has to run some applications at 130 degrees because, how do I do this? Do I want to allow, I also need glasses, so.
Let me try.
Okay, good, thank you. Thanks. So if you're building a chip for inside the LED light, and you have to control the light, so it's got perfect colors and perfect warmth, and you want to control the energy for that, well, that chip needs to run at 130 degrees. In automotive, 150. Some devices, the wearable devices are running at 0.7 volts. Okay, it's sub-threshold, and some of you guys know that better than I do. At sub-threshold, SRAMs have a hard time running. So that's sort of the requirement for next generation or XRAM. We're pretty excited. The next slide talks about the challenge of flash at below 55 nanometer. Okay, this is a very familiar embedded flash cross section. It's from SST called Super Flash. And the first thing you notice that is this structure looks very imposing. It's big, it's tall, it looks like a castle. Not a skyscraper like DRAM, but it looks like a castle, okay? It looks like a mansion, okay? And the reason is that for a flash memory to remember the content of 1 or 0, it needs to endure about 8 to 10 volts of change in threshold voltage. Now think about this. In most semiconductors, the threshold voltage is half a volt. So we're talking more than 10x change in the behavior of the semiconductor, 10x. To build that, you need about 20 mask layers. And to program and to erase, you need about 7 and 10 volts. And the recurrent is about 100 microamp per megahertz. A lot of mumbo jumbles, okay? But all it says is that when you go down to smaller and smaller geometry, you want your wearable to last for a week, not like the Apple Watch that every night you have to charge with this strange little wire that has a base in it, okay? You have to figure out a way to solve that problem. All those big numbers are bad news for battery. Okay, so the question is, how can you change all those numbers by 10x so that your wearable can go 7 days? It's not one-to-one, but the next picture does tell you it's about one-to-one. So the left is the operating power of today's low-power MCU, maybe from a Dialog or some famous guys. Okay, you can see the blue is the wireless. The amount of energy the wireless used to transmit and receive the signal is the dominant power consumption area. And that's why low energy Bluetooth, smart Bluetooth, and whatever the next Bluetooth will be, will keep trying to optimize the power. And ARM, TSMC, the very big guys are saying, hey, you know what? What we can do is reduce the power consumption footprint for the microcontroller and the basic transistor. Ultra low power is one catch-all phrase for that. So if you said, hey, we believe in ARM, we believe in TSMC, download it from Amazon or iBook. It's called By the Sound of Silence. Has to do, by the way, with airplanes and disappearance of Malaysian Airlines. So, all right, but back to the road. Okay, first product that we're going to announce, and we're going to announce a little bit of this at the ARM Technology Conference, is a 10 microamp per megahertz. So remember the previous slide, we're going to reduce the read current, the amount of energy it takes to read per megahertz by 10x of a non-volatile memory. The silicon came back in April of 2015. We spent the summer testing it. We're very excited about this memory. Product tape out is Q1 of 2016. Second product, the product call is second half of 2016. It will have 100 megabits on the LCD driver device, driver IC side of it, and 8 gigabits on the DRAM side of it. To talk about some of the issues that I point to and we hope to address. The next one is an SRAM that delivers 16 nanometer quality in 28 nanometer silicon. Now, why that's so important is that, as you know, after the 20 nanometer, the industry's gone to FinFET. It's very expensive, and it's not for every application, and not everyone wants to use expensive toolings, EDA tools, and masks for it. So we're offering a very creative SRAM that hopefully will solve that problem. And last but not least, we're working on, a little bit late, and I apologize for that, we're working on a multi-time programmable memory bit cell that will require less than 300 millivolt of delta VT. And hopefully, with any luck, we can get it out by 2017. And with that, I am done. Remember, the name of the novel is The Sound of Silence. Don't remember anything else? Please remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie, for your wonderful memory roadmap. Caspar would like to express our thank you to you, and our president would like to present a thank you plaque. Let's give Charlie another round of applause.